Most people fail when moving abroad, and here is why. Now, moving abroad is a massive step in anyone's life. I made the move abroad from the UK to Australia 3 years ago, and there's no doubt it is a massive move. It's probably, for people who do move abroad, it might be the biggest change in their whole entire life. And for a lot of people, it goes extremely well. For a lot of people, it doesn't. In fact, a lot of people do fail when moving abroad. It doesn't work out for them. And in today's video, we're going to go through a few reasons to why that might be the case for you guys who are thinking of moving abroad, so you can expect these things. I'm going to share some light on the reality of moving abroad, because as amazing as it is, there is definitely some challenges. You can take these points into consideration so that you don't make these mistakes when you move, and talk about why a lot of people do fail when they make that big jump. If you're new to the channel, I'm Luke. I have been living abroad for around 3 years now from the UK, and I've definitely learned a lot in the process of moving, and I can talk a lot from my experience, but also from other people's experiences that I've met as well. So the first reason to why people often fail when they move abroad is unrealistic expectations. Now, moving abroad is definitely glorified as this amazing thing, and like I said, there is definitely amazing parts of it. The whole idea of moving abroad is so exciting. You're moving to a new country, which, especially if you're from somewhere like the UK, it's going to be a lot nicer than the UK, and the whole idea is amazing. But when you picture moving, you often only picture the good things. You picture the amazing beach lifestyle, you might picture the weather. You picture all the amazing things about moving. The reality is that that stuff is going to come, but there is a whole load of difficult things which we'll come on to in this video, which people don't often expect. Especially moving to Australia, this is a big one, I think, because a lot of people move there because they see it on social media. They see people living it up every day, surfing, chilling on the beach, drinking, and they think, I want a bit of that. And whilst that is gonna come, there's definitely a lot of difficult moments, finding jobs, finding houses, stresses about money, all that kind of thing, which you don't often think about. And also, when you move, a lot of life is fairly similar. Unless you work for yourself, like, you're going to be working 9 to 5 just like you were back home. You're going to be paying rent, you're going to be doing food shops, and even though it sounds obvious, it's not something that a lot of people think about. So they go into it with this unrealistic expectation that it's going to be a massive holiday, when in reality the novelty does wear off. Even though it's a much better lifestyle and stuff, the novelty of moving does wear off after a while, and it is fairly normal life. Number 2 is financial struggles. This could be that people don't save enough money as they expect when they move. The cost of living in the new country, if you haven't done research, might be a lot more expensive than you planned for. If you haven't done your research on wages, or you haven't got a job yet, you might end up getting a much lower wage than you expected when you first moved. And also just lots of hidden costs that you don't think about when moving abroad, because there is a lot of little things that creep up. That's one thing with traveling and moving abroad, is you plan how much you want to spend, but in reality you always end up spending more than that, because something will happen, or a little add-on. You might book a flight and then you have to book some insurance, or the baggage will be more, or you move into a house and stuff, and it's like there's a lot of added costs which you don't think about. So people who maybe have only prepared for what they think they're going to spend actually end up spending a lot more, which can be very stressful, especially if you haven't got a backup or you haven't got decent savings. Then it can be a stressful time for sure. And a lot of people do fail when they move abroad because of financial reasons. Finding a job and a house, for example, you might plan to find a job and a house straight away, but when you're living in a country as expensive as Australia, if it does take you a month or 2 to find work, that's quite a lot of time without work, where money's going to be coming out, especially if you're staying in a hostel or you're already paying rent. Like, it can take a while to find a job. Maybe people don't account for that, and it does, the money starts to go down and people panic maybe, and a lot of people do go home because they just can't find a job in time and stuff. The next point goes on from that a little bit, and it is struggling to find a job and finding a house. This is one of the challenges of moving abroad, and no doubt you will encounter this. You might get very lucky with certain places. You might be able to find a house very quickly. It does depend. We've moved around quite a lot and it varies. Sometimes we've got very lucky and found an apartment straight away. Sometimes it's taken a few weeks, and I think it's the same with jobs. jobs you can get lucky and find a job within a week, or in other places it's taken maybe a month or two to find work. And maybe people don't account for this. I think, yeah, maybe they haven't saved enough money to cover them in time. And a lot of people, I see it a lot on social media, particularly people who move to Australia, and they panic and they can't find a job. And I see on social media that they're going home and they're quitting because they can't find a job. The reality with finding a job in a house, you have to be relentless with it. As I've said before, you have to be there applying every single day, and you will eventually get one. But I don't think people realise the work that it sometimes takes to actually get a job in a house. You can't just sit there and apply for 5 and then enjoy yourself for a week hoping that they're going to come back to you, because it's not like that. You have to be there hours every single day applying, and you will get one if you do it that way. I think it's a big thing that a lot of people don't really expect when they move abroad, and it stuffs a lot of people up. And I think it's a big reason to why a lot of people do fail, because they can't find a job and they can't find a house, and it gets desperate for them. The next reason is failing to meet new people, feeling homesick and missing people from home. Feeling homesick is a very natural thing. When you move abroad, it affects everyone differently. I haven't felt particularly homesick much. There's been the odd time where I have missed certain things from home for sure. Homesickness will affect people completely differently. You might get very homesick. The thing is with homesickness is it does come and go. You're not gonna constantly feel homesick. It's gonna come and go. You're gonna, have waves. But I think the mistake that people make is they don't put themselves out there at the start, especially if you go traveling by yourself. I've been lucky because I was with my best mate when I first moved abroad, and now I live with my girlfriend, so I haven't really been alone. I think it's a big reason to why I haven't felt that homesick. My whole time abroad, I've probably spent maybe a week or two, no more than a week or two by myself. I think if I was by myself for longer, I definitely would have felt more homesick. So for you guys who are moving on your own, it's really important that if you are the sort of person that might get homesick, put yourself out there straight away, because I've noticed the times that I miss home the least is when I'm around the most people. And if you're with people all the time, doing activities, you're making new friends, you're not gonna feel homesick. Always you're gonna feel the most homesick if you're sat at home in the evenings on your own. That's when you're gonna feel the most homesick for sure. And it's a big reason why people fail, because they don't put themselves out there. They don't really try and make friends, and before they know it, they haven't got anyone around them, and they're starting to feel pretty lonely and homesick, which is one of the downsides of traveling, but that's the reality. And it's one of the sacrifices of moving. To get a much better life abroad, you are sacrificing, leaving a lot of people behind, which is a difficult thing for sure. I definitely haven't made close friends like I have back home, but it's one of the sacrifices. And the last point is not researching where you're moving to, or not traveling around to see your favorite places, just committing to living somewhere when you might not have any idea that you actually like it there. This is a slight mistake that I made when I moved to Australia. All I had pictured in my head was living in Sydney. It's all I'd seen about Australia really, and I didn't really consider ever living anywhere else. I was just set, me and my mate, we were just set on living in Sydney, and we lived there for the first like 4 or 5 months of Australia. Looking back, I wish we'd done a bit more research, and rather than, because we spent like 2 months in Sydney just relaxing and then finding a job and a house, by the time we'd done all that, it was like 2 months in. Looking back, I would have rather spent them 2 months traveling and actually looking for somewhere which we would like a lot more. It was winter in Sydney as well. I just think I wish we'd gone up the East Coast or something and maybe lived somewhere a bit nicer, travelled around a bit more, and just done some research before. I wish we were more open to potentially living in other places rather than just being set on that one place. And I think it's another reason why a lot of people do fail when they move, is because they're set on one place and maybe that place doesn't live up to their expectations, or they have a few bad experiences which puts a bit of a down on that place. So do your research on where you're moving to. It's best if you actually travel first, or if you've actually been to that place before, then you're gonna have a much better idea to whether you like it or not. If you've never been somewhere before, you have no idea if you're gonna like it or not. So it's a big commitment, and you might actually end up hating the place. And yeah, it's a big reason to why a lot of people do end up going back home, because they haven't really done the research. And my experience moving abroad, I definitely think it was a big success. Don't get me wrong, these things, I had to deal with a few of these things for sure during my time. It's natural when you move abroad, but for me, it was definitely a success. It was the best thing I ever did, moving abroad. I knew that it wasn't going to be a constant holiday. I knew what to expect, and I was ready for the new lifestyle that I was going to have to live. Luckily, I'd saved enough money, so financial struggles weren't too much of an issue. There was a few points where money got quite low, but we managed to get ourselves set up with a job again. Finding a job in a house could be hard at times, but generally it's never been a massive issue for us. I haven't really felt particularly homesick, which is definitely a positive. And we definitely learned from that mistake in Sydney, from not researching where we were going to live and just staying there. So they are some points about moving abroad, some of the realities of moving and things to expect. And if you take all these points into consideration, then you definitely won't fail when you move abroad. It will be the best thing you ever do. If you need any help with moving abroad, I've released a full moving abroad guide, which I'll leave in the description. It's there on the screen as well. Feel free to check that out if you need any help with moving abroad. It might just change your life. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you very soon with another video.